what a political party promises during an election is entirely between the political party and the voter. That is how democracies work. Who really decides how taxpayer money is spent? Is it the government in Delhi? Is it the judiciary? Is it media? Or should it be the government that is elected by the people?
So do you also see this as a federal debate that the union government should not be dictating what states should do as far as their budgets go?
That is, in my view, the BJP's mentality, which is a very centralizing, father figure, we know it all attitude. And I think that plays out saying, oh, we know how to spend money for people. These state governments don't know.
Are welfare schemes or freebies essential in a democracy, or are they a burden to the exchequer? This is a debate that has been going on for many days now after Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about it and a BJP leader went to court also. Joining me is political economist and chairman of data analytics of the Indian National Congress, Mr. Praveen Chakravarty. I just want to ask you first, there is a fierce debate going on. It has now reached the Supreme Court. Parties like the DMK have said categorically that the states should be allowed to decide what a welfare measure is and what is not. What is your take on the entire debate?
See, I think first and foremost, I think the debate is welcome. I think we must recognize that. I think it's a welcome debate. Second, I think there is a lot of confusion around the issue itself. What is the issue? What is the issue in the Supreme Court? Is it that political parties are making promises during election campaigns? Is it that political parties are using tax money for what they deem as frivolous freebies? So is freebies the problem, or is the fact that making the promise during a campaign the problem, or is the problem something else? I think that is where we have to be first very clear about this. Now, I believe when the Prime Minister referred to it in his speech, he was referring to it primarily as from the perspective of a political party making a promise during a campaign. Now, if that is the case, what is the Prime Minister trying to say? Is the Prime Minister trying to say political parties are not allowed to make promises? So let's walk through with an example. 2011, the DMK, which is in power, announces in its election manifesto for the Tamil Nadu elections that it will provide free laptops to all students. Okay, let's take that as an example. Now, is the Prime Minister's problem that the DMK has announced it in its election manifesto, or is the Prime Minister's problem laptop is a freebie, or is the problem that don't announce it during the campaign, but let's say I get elected, if the DMK were to get elected and come back to power, and then they announced that they were giving free laptops, is that okay then? So, and this is where I think the Prime Minister's arguments fall flat on almost all of these issues. First, what a political party promises during an election is entirely between the political party and the voter. That is how democracies work. So if the voter does not like what the party is promising, they will not vote for it. Second, there seems to be this illusion that by making such false promises, you can actually win an election. Guess what? The DMK lost the election in 2011. In fact, Tamil Nadu is held up as the poster child for this freebies culture. But as you know, between 1991 to 2011, the incumbent party always lost the election in Tamil Nadu. So it's very clear, just a freebie, promising a freebie in an election manifesto is not going to swing an election. So then what is the issue? Is the issue laptop is a freebie and not welfare? If that is the case, who decides that? If anything, during the COVID pandemic, laptop became almost educational welfare good. So if education is okay as welfare, why should laptop not be? But the larger point I'm making is who gets to decide this? What is a freebie today may become welfare tomorrow. A poor state's freebie may be a rich state's welfare, or the reverse. Who gets to decide all of these? And then the last point is, who really decides how taxpayer money is spent? Is it the government in Delhi? Is it the judiciary? Is it media? Or should it be the government that is elected by the people? It's very clear, as per our constitution, that an elected government has the right and the powers to decide how to spend people's money.
So there are a couple of points which you've mentioned. One is the federal debate, who decides what is a freebie, whether it's a state or the... So I'm going to come to each issue. The first is federal issue, then what is the Prime Minister himself saying, and what exactly constitutes a freebie. My first question to you would be, from your answer itself, is what is a freebie and what is a welfare measure? Are the two different? Because Tamil Nadu has been constantly saying that stop using the word freebie, which itself gives the bad connotation. Use the word welfare measure.
I completely agree. Like I said, today's freebie may be tomorrow's welfare. Let us say I promise free internet to everybody in a developed state like Tamil Nadu. Is that a freebie or a welfare? Maybe in Bihar it is a freebie. But maybe in Tamil Nadu it is welfare because it's a more developed state. And internet is almost a public good. So my point is, it is an impossible debate, and this is completely futile because this will never be settled. So what is a freebie and what is a welfare? There is neither an economic definition for it, nor a legal definition, nor a political definition. It is entirely between what we call a social contract between the political parties and the voters in a democracy. So there is no answer to that.
So Praveen, what is the difference between a government providing a road for people and giving subsidized scooters, cycles, laptop, mixies, grinders? What is the basic difference between this?
See, economists will tell you some are merit goods and some the others are non-merit goods. But I am arguing that is a very shallow definition because there is no universal definition of that. What if in a state like Kerala, let's say all villages have roads. So then is providing internet, what is it called? Is it freebie or welfare? So, but in Bihar, maybe they don't have roads everywhere. So roads are considered merit goods. So the point I am making, which is the very traditional economic definition of merit and non-merit goods, do not hold. And hence we should not even get into this debate. It is completely between the voter and the party. I think the larger question, why did all of this debate come up, and maybe we will discuss this later, is it came up because of a report by the RBI. I don't know if you know that the origin of this discussion was the report put out by the Reserve Bank of India, which said we are worried about the financial situation of state governments because they have indulged in freebies. They use the word freebies. That happened in June. In July, the Prime Minister raised it in an issue, and in August, of course, the courts are debating this. So, yes, I think that is a legitimate issue about the financial condition of state governments. But you can't control financial conditions of states by dictating how they should spend the money.
So it's not just the RBI. In fact, N.K. Singh, who's a chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission, I'm just quoting him, according to a lot of news reports, he said the economics of freebies is invariably wrong. It is a race to the bottom and it is not the road to efficiency or prosperity. And this is one thing which has been said in that petition by BJP's Ashwini Upadhyay, that the states do not have the money for these welfare measures and the burden on the state is going up. So what the petition in fact asks is that when elections are announced and when these freebies or welfare measures are promised, there should be some accountability as to whether the state has the money. If that political party comes into power, is there enough money in the government's exchequer to actually dole out these welfare measures?
Correct. So let's extend that argument. Let us assume that a political party has promised free laptops, all right, during the elections, and they've come to power. Now, either they can deliver on that promise or not deliver on that promise. That is between them and the voters. If they choose to deliver on that promise, then they need the money for it. Let us assume they do not have the money. If they do not have the money, what are the options before a state government in India today? They have to go and borrow. They have to borrow from the Reserve Bank of India's window, and in India they have to get permission from the center. So when states go out to borrow, that is when you impose these conditions and harsh penalties. If you think that the state does not have money and they want to come and borrow more, then there are two things that the RBI can do. Either say, no, you do not have the viability to borrow more, or say your interest rate will be very, very high. It's exactly like what a business would do or an individual would do, isn't it? Can a bank turn around and say, no, you cannot give laptops? That a bank cannot. A bank can either say, I will give you the money, or I will not give you the money because you're not viable, or I will charge a very high interest rate for you. Let the state decide how to manage.
So that is again another thing which is mentioned in the petition. It says that under Article 293(3) of the Constitution, the state government cannot raise any loan or borrow money where a loan with the government of India is outstanding. But if that is very strictly enforced, then many states would not be able to carry out the welfare measures, right? So we go back to the argument that the states don't have money, therefore they shouldn't be announcing these welfare measures.
Correct, but my point is control it through that. Control it. So let me give you an example using from the business world. Okay, let us say an airline, famously Kingfisher. Okay, and let us say an airline is just giving away air tickets at very low prices, unviable prices, so-called freebies, and they run out of money. Then they go to a bank to borrow. What will the bank say? The bank cannot tell the airline, no, you must sell your ticket only at X rupees. That's not what the bank does. The bank says, no, I will not give you the money. You can't borrow. Which means the airline either automatically has to increase the prices of its tickets, or it has to go bankrupt. So that's exactly the principle we should be using here. I think the problem in this is the problem is not freebies. The problem is access to money for state governments. And if there are certain conditions and rules about that, automatically the other things will get taken care of.
So Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman asked the states to check their fiscal strength of their government and make budgetary provisions accordingly when they are figuring out what the welfare schemes are. Do you think that is a fair ask?
I think it is a fair ask. I think it is fair. As the Finance Minister of India, she has every right to be concerned about the fiscal health of various state governments, because ultimately the fiscal health of the country is the sum of the fiscal health of all the different states. So that is a fair ask, and that is justifiable and understandable.
But the government keeps alluding to Sri Lanka. I mean, there was a meeting in which Sri Lanka was alluded. This petition talks about Sri Lanka. Is that comparison really fair?
No, that is exaggerating, and that is completely unfair. I think Sri Lanka's problems were external debt, borrowing in foreign currency, and states cannot, neither does the center, nor states certainly cannot go out and borrow in foreign currency. So that is completely fear-mongering by the union government.
Tamil Nadu government, in fact, Finance Minister PTR, when this debate had come up in the parliament, one of his first reactions were that Tamil Nadu specifically targeted. Do you also believe so?
I think so, and I can understand why. I mean, Tamil Nadu's Finance Minister PTR, a good friend of mine, he is a staunch federalist, just like the Tamil Nadu always has been as a state, and the DMK has been as a political party. So and right now there is what is called a lot of tension around fiscal federalism, which is the relationship between the states, the union and the states about managing finances. And hence, Tamil Nadu does get picked a lot more by the union finance minister. And I think PTR is right to actually respond and retort to those some of those accusations.
But there's another criticism of Tamil Nadu that many of their welfare measures are targeted for everyone. They don't pick and choose parts of society which need it more than the others, which is also a burden on the exchequer.
See, again, that's a very kind of, technical economic issue. Now, you can say we have to target. We have to target only the poor. The question is, how easy is it to target the poor? Okay? There are costs for targeting the poor. So let us say if the costs for targeting is much higher than the costs of actually providing it to everybody, then maybe it makes sense to provide it to everybody. Right? So there's a lot of research, a lot of literature on this. For example, the Congress party, and I was involved in this for the 2019 election, you may recall, we came out with a proposal called Nyay. And Nyay was giving certain amount of basic income to the bottom 20% of poor people of India. So we decided to target. But all schemes you may not be able to target. Some you may be able to target. Many you may not be able to target. So I don't think we can have a general rule saying, oh, you should only do targeted welfare. You cannot do universal welfare. And I don't think that is true. Even in America, public health and public education is universal. So I don't think that is a fair argument.
And Praveen, what is the political reasoning behind this debate, do you think? I mean, we know that the RBI said this, the Finance Commission feels so, but there must be some political reason also why the BJP is raking this up again and again.
Yeah, first, of course, I think the Gujarat state elections is perhaps one reason. I also believe that by making this a political issue, the Prime Minister has successfully brought the debate about state finances into the mainstream. Otherwise, this would have been an obscure RBI report, because RBI does this almost every quarter. They keep raising alarm about state finances and nobody. The fact that you and I are doing this discussion about state finances is because this was made into a political issue, right? So I think there certainly was some element of that in my view. And then I think the third is to kind of, that is in my view, the BJP's mentality, which is a very centralizing father figure, we know it all attitude. And I think that plays out saying, oh, we know how to spend money for people. These state governments don't know. And they must be told how to do this. And we will tell you. It's the exact same mentality that gave us demonetization, that gave us this centralizing GST, and it's the exact same mentality. So it's a combination of three reasons. I think Gujarat election may have had a role in it, but the fact that to bring state finances into the mainstream, and the third, it's just their mentality.
So in fact, something interesting which PTR again said today, I read an interview in the Deccan Herald, he said that does the Constitution provide the Prime Minister any right to intrude into the budgetary process of a state? So do you also see this as a federal debate that the union government should not be dictating what states should do as far as their budgets go?
Absolutely. In fact, both PTR and I have been ardent opponents of GST right from the time it was launched, again on the federalism angle. So it's not just budgetary. See, what is happening here? What was GST? GST was about getting revenues, and they took away that right from the state governments. Now they're saying, okay, you not only can't get money on your own, we will also tell you how to spend that money. So it's the exact same principle, and that is complete. I mean, there is simply no way that constitutionally somebody sitting in Delhi, be it the judiciary or the union government, can dictate how an elected government spends money for the people that elected them in the first place.
So in that regard, I was watching your video which went viral again on redistribution of wealth. In fact, you were noting that India has had a policy of redistributing wealth from the richer states to poorer states. But in all these years, it's not really worked because some of the poorer states remain to be poor. Now, that argument can be turned around to say, Praveen, that when these states remain poor, it becomes all the more reason for the richer states to be more prudent with their spending, right?
Yes. See, this is a complex debate. as I raised in that video, I said yes, it's a practice that we should indulge in, and almost all federal nations indulge in, which is we take money from the rich states and we give it to the poorer states so that we can close the gap between the rich and the poor states. But if after 70 years the gap's not closing and you keep taking from the richest states, at some point the richest states are going to ask, how long is this going to go on? And that is, by the way, that's a 5-year-old video. 2017 video is what I raised that in. So it's in that sense it was quite prescient. So, and today we are having exactly that argument. So when PTR or Tamil Nadu or Kerala or others are saying we give for every 100 rupees we only get 35 rupees back. For every 100 rupees that we give, we get only 35 rupees back, whereas Bihar gets 600 rupees back for every 100 rupees they give. And how long will this go on is what they are asking. And I think that is a very valid question. So it is, instead of focusing on reducing powers of the richer states, we must actually put all our energies to focus on how to improve and close the gap between the poorer states and the richer states so that we don't have to keep extracting more and more from the richer states. And that is where I think we're kind of going in the wrong direction in this debate. Our intention should all be on Bihar and Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, not on Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra and Kerala.
My final question to you is that you mentioned during the interview that you think the finance minister saying that states should watch out for their budgets is a fair ask. But there is an entire debate also on the federal structure. So what do you think should be the way forward in the sense when it comes to welfare measures? What should states watch out for, and how much interference can come from even the Supreme Court or the union government?
First of all, Supreme Court has no role in dictating finances in terms of revenues or expenditure. I think that we have to be very clear. That role is the exclusive domain of the legislature and the executive. That's number one. Number two, now the union government can impose certain conditions on state governments saying that if your deficit exceeds a certain threshold, then we will not allow you to borrow, or your borrowing rate will be much higher. That is fine. That is understandable, justifiable, and economically prudent. But they cannot say what the state government should be spending their money on. That is not for the union government to interfere in.
Okay, thank you very much, Praveen Chakravarty. So he's saying the union government can advise, tell the governments about their borrowings, can tell the states that look, you've borrowed enough, but they have no locus standi to tell states on what they should be spending their money on. Thank you very much for joining us here at the News Minute.
Thank you.